Welcome to Divorganize. My name is Amanda DuBois and I'm a family law attorney and I practice in Seattle, Washington. And every day I have women in my office going through the most scary experience of their life, which is divorce. And what I've learned is that it's really, really scary, and at a time when you are so scared and so confused and so uncertain of the future, at the same time you have to get very practical and get very smart and make some really important decisions while all of these emotions are going on. And I think one of the hardest parts about that is that this legal process is really confusing to people, and to try to be able to figure out what's going on in the legal process, what information do I have to gather, how am I going to gather that information, how am I going to take care of my kids, how am I going to take care of my future, while all that is going on in the end of the marriage and the fear of the future, you're going to have to make some really important business decisions. And the best way that you can do that is to be educated. So I notice that I'm sort of telling my clients every single day, kind of here's how the system works and here's what you can expect. Here's how the legal standards work. So I thought it would be helpful to put together actually a video series that basically explains what I explain to people on a daily basis, so that you can watch this and you can rewatch it and you can start to learn how the process is going to work. And I think the more you know about the process, the less likely you are to be afraid of it. But here's the thing, I practice in Washington State and I don't practice in other states, so I can't give legal advice. So you need to be very careful when you're listening to this series not to assume that I'm able to explain to you the law in your state. You might be from Kentucky or you might be from Illinois or California. The laws are going to be very different in each state with regard to divorce. But when we're in law school, they teach us something called issue spotting. And issue spotting gives you the ability to know what questions to ask. So even though I can't tell you how California is going to handle a question, or Texas or North Carolina, I can tell you that these are the questions that you need to start asking yourself and the information that you have to start gathering. So without giving you legal advice, I'm here to educate you so that you can start spotting issues yourself. So what are we going to do here? What I'm going to do is I'm sitting here in my kitchen because I don't want this to be scary to you and sit here in a business suit and look all official and lawyer-like. Really, it's just a conversation between you and me about what you need to understand so that you can make your way through the divorce process as well as possible under your circumstances. I just came up with the topics that are the most common questions that people have for me and the things that I find myself saying over and over, and I thought it would be helpful in an issue spotting manner, not to try to tell you the law of your state, but just things to think about so that you start to understand this process so that it becomes less intimidating. So some of the things that we're going to talk about, just you and me, are going to be, what do you do if you get served with divorce papers? What's the first thing you do? That's scary. How do you plan for a divorce? What if you're the one who wants to leave? What do you need to do to get ready for that? And what's the best way to go about that? We're going to then get very, right down to the nitty-gritty and talk about your assets and your liabilities, how to make a spreadsheet. We're going to talk about how to make a budget, talk a lot about finances, because that's, at the end of the day, the most important thing. It's kind of like they say on the airplane, before you put the oxygen on your child, you should put the oxygen on yourself first. Same thing is true in the divorce process. You have got to take care of yourself, and that includes financial. Might you qualify for spousal maintenance or alimony, or might you have to pay spousal maintenance or alimony? Then we're going to go through the whole legal process. We're going to talk about sort of globally what is the divorce process like, and how does it work, and how do the pieces fit together. We're going to talk about legal discovery, how you gather legal information about somebody. We're going to talk about child custody issues. We're going to talk about parenting plans. I'm going to talk with you about that, and I'm going to talk with experts about that, because there's a lot for you to think about how you want your children to transit through this process and how you want your children to be able to have relationships with both parents when this is over. Then we're going to talk about trial, if you get that far, which most people don't. Most divorces settle, but if you do end up in a trial, you need to understand, we watch TV and we see what we think looks like a trial, but guess what? It's very different when you're in a divorce trial, when you're the litigant and you have to go up and testify in court. Understand what judges kind of think about and what they look for in cases, and how the process is of getting evidence before the court. So we're going to talk about trial, and then we're going to talk about what do you do after the divorce is over. So things like how do you go about transferring assets and how do you transfer a retirement account. Those are kind of real nitty-gritty types of things. And then we've got another series on sort of frequently asked questions, like what do you need to know when you head into a divorce, and what mistakes do people make when they head into their divorce. So those will be just you and me talking about all those things that you need to know, that sort of overview stuff. And my hope is that you'll watch them and that you can rewatch them, because there is a lot of information, because most people don't know anything about the legal process. And you might have had a next door neighbor or a cousin or some girlfriend who's gone through a divorce. But when you're in the middle of it and you're dealing with the stress of the end of your marriage and the uncertainty of your financial future, you have to start absorbing information at a very high rate. And my goal for you and my hope for you is that you can watch these and you can watch them over and over and hopefully take some notes, so that it'll all kind of hopefully start making a little bit of sense to you. And along with the videos that you can watch, I've also put together actually something that I call a divorganizer. And the purpose of our divorganizer is so that you can have a notebook that you can start writing stuff down in. And for example, in there, when it's time for your vision, we'll be walking through so that you can take some notes about that. And when it's time for your budget, there's going to be a list of the things that you have to remember for your budget. So you don't have to take notes on everything that I'm talking about, because we've got it all put together already here in the divorganizer, which is basically a planning book. One caution I'll make is that if you're going to use this divorganizer and you have a lawyer, you might want to talk to your lawyer about how to make this a confidential document that would be called kind of an attorney-client privilege document. So you don't have to, people send you a subpoena and say, do you have a diary? Which in some jurisdictions you have to turn over. If you're going to use the divorganizer and you're going to use a lawyer, you want to ask your lawyer how to keep that confidential if it's possible where you live in your jurisdiction. And here's the other thing is, I'm very interested to hear from you. And if there's something that I've talked about that's unclear, or something that I've totally missed and it's come up in your situation, shoot me an email. Let me know if there's something else you'd like to hear about. Let's start this by talking about gathering a team of people around you, because I think the first thing that you need to do, maybe you've just been served with divorce papers, or maybe you're planning to file divorce papers, but you've got to get a team of people around you. And the reason for that is you can't be going and talking, well, you can, but it's probably just not a good idea to go and talk to every single person you know about what's going on in your personal life, specifically in your divorce. So who's going to be on your team? Well, here's what I'd like you to think about. We all have people in our life who see us kind of bigger than we see ourselves, who can kind of hold a high vision for us. So you might have a friend who just doesn't, when you get in the dumps, she doesn't go down in the dumps with you. She tries to pull you up and out of the dumps when you're having a problem. Or someone who kind of reminds you how you want to be and how you want to behave and what your values are. Those are the people you want on your divorce team. So other people you might want, so those will be friends. And I'm going to make a suggestion. You might not want to have your mother or your sister or your best friend on your divorce team, and here's why. There are people in our lives that we want to kind of go to bat with us and say, he shouldn't get away with that, that's wrong, how did that happen, that shouldn't happen to you. And those people kind of want to get retaliation against your ex for the way that he's behaving or what he's done wrong to you. Those people are awesome friends to have, and they're awesome to be able to vent with. But the people on your divorce team, for purposes of what I'm talking about, it would be that friend who, when you go in and start complaining about your ex, she says, how do you really want to be in this situation? How do you want to feel about yourself? Do you really want to get in the dirt and sling mud with him, or do you want to rise above it? Those would be the people that you want to think about having on your divorce team for purposes of this series.